Something is functional.
Good morning, Lamide and Dr. Akoni. How are you, sir? How are you, man? Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, hello.
Yes, sir, we can hear you loud and clear. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, ma. Good morning, ma. Thank you so much for this. Yeah, good morning, audience. We plan to start at 11 a.m. I think we have roughly another 10, 12 minutes to go. We have two of our esteemed panelists and faculty already online. The other two, I'm pretty sure, will be online in a few minutes. Let me just promise you that you will learn from this session. Just thinking through what we are planning to go through today, I'm already excited because what we are going to be discussing is exceedingly topical, is terribly current, and also highly concerning as far as our democracy and our living environment and nation is concerned. So I'm really pleased that we can have this conversation just a few days before one of two sets of election we're going to have. And I'm majorly pleased with the numbers of people who have shown interest in this session. And most importantly, for me, is the caliber of the panelists we have that are going to be sharing their thoughts and their knowledge and their experiences with us in terms of the cyberspace. So as scheduled, we are very much on time. We have just about 10 more minutes to go. Let's sit still, keep tight until the session starts. While we are waiting for the session to start, and while we also are eagerly awaiting our last panelists to join, we have 3 now online. Please feel free to throw in your comments, your questions, your queries, your concerns, so that while we have the second half of the session that will deal with and indeed address the thoughts they've shared with us, we also believe that they will attempt to respond to your topical concerns and questions as part and parcel of their deliberations and submissions. So once again, let me welcome you to Allogene Group and thank you for joining us. See you, speak to you, share thoughts with you in the next 9 to 10 minutes. God bless you all. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you.
I'm warm.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Can somebody just acknowledge that you can hear and see me? Admit, can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, I can. Good morning.
Can you also see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Fantastic. Faye, can you be on standby, please, and be available to respond to my questions? So once again, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this morning, elections. Like I said earlier before we started, this is an exciting time for us in Nigeria, and indeed also a challenging time. We're going through a major political calendar, and that also comes with myriad of security threats and vulnerability. There's been so much said around physical security threats, and I will take you through some thoughts in the next few minutes. But lesser have been spoken to with regards to the cybersecurity threats we face as a nation, with specific attention given to the 2023 elections. Today is an hour and a half session, which I'm sure will be fulsome and exceedingly intellectually robust. Because we are dealing with an issue that is very topical and current. And we also have on the panelists 4 fantastic individuals that we introduce later on that will take us through these conversations. Now, you guys are seeing us via our YouTube channel, so please feel free to type in your comments and your questions, which I'm sure we'll find time to address later on. But let me just set the scene for us. Absolutely, most Nigerians, if not all, unless you're living in Mercury or Venus or Mars, is conscious of the fact that in the next few days, we'll be going through general elections. These are the dates that we need to watch out for. So in the next couple of days now, the presidential campaign and also the National Assembly members who are the potentials, which first on the 23rd, and on the 25th of February, we go out there to vote for the next president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. On the 9th of March, the campaign for the governorship of most of our states, about 2 or 3, and members of the House of Assembly will pause on the 9th, and the election will be on the 11th of March. So these are important dates that we need to watch out for. And they are important in terms of the security and the safety and wellness and well-being of the nation, and indeed our responsibility as citizens. What we know now is that well over 94 million Nigerians have registered for this election. Now, will everybody vote? Maybe not, for one reason or the other. That is fantastically good news for us as a nation as far as democracy is concerned. But when you have over 94 million people going out there to vote at different localities, that in itself is a risk that had to be managed by us as individuals and, of course, the government, statutory forces, and other allied agencies to ensure that we're safe. And if you look at the chart I've just shared with you on the screen, even though we have a high level of numbers of voters registered, going to about 100 million now, we also have a lot of money being spent on this election. That in itself is a risk that we have to be conscious of. When you look at the trajectory of violence of elections in the last few years, we are recording a higher number of incidents as far as various types of crime and threats and security risks are concerned. One trend that we also notice are the attacks on INEC offices, which are unprecedented. Look at the history of Nigeria. But there's a major factor that bothers me as an individual. If you ask an average Nigerian, whatever that means, what are the issues that are of concern to them? Many of us, over 40%, will tell you the economy and the job. And on top of that now will be the cash trap situation we find ourselves lately. And of course, alongside that is a challenge that many petrol stations are not servicing us. And for those who are, the prices are nudging up than what we are used to. Nigerians are still concerned about corruption and national security, as you expect. But if you look at the messaging from the political parties, there seems to be a distance between their messages and the needs and wants and aspirations of Nigerians. That in itself is quite worrying. And I'll tell you why I'm sharing this context with you, because those are the triggers that can suggest that we may have more challenges to deal with than we have ever dealt with as a nation. So if we look at the current profile of how the election may go, there are three possible outcomes, possibly more. But let's just focus on the three for the purpose of this conversation. Somebody wins clearly on the 25th. That's great. But the potential of that, from the numbers we are seeing, is medium. There's no high likelihood that that may happen. That could change in the next few days, to be candid. And it's also possible that there be no clear majority winner. The likelihood of that as of today is higher. And then the third possibility, which we hope will not emerge, that somebody will win and many people are going to say, hey, what's going on here? This is not the person or persons that we voted for. So these are the three possible potential in terms of results that we may experience as a nation. Each of these come with its own risk. And if you look at the trend of security incidents in the last few weeks of 2023, 6 weeks or thereabouts, if you compare the numbers of incidents that we've recorded this year with the same time last year, there's been over 27% increase, which means the trajectory of insecurity in Nigeria is growing by the day, informed by various factors, many of which we all have experienced and we know about. So, one challenge we face, based on all this context, is the possibility of our election being interfered with within the cyberspace. Not just the physical intervention that we normally have, not just the violence that we sometimes experience. Sadly, we are now a digital nation with a substantial number of Nigerians out there using their digital phone, their laptops, their iPads to engage in commerce, to communicate, to transact, and to do many other things, which in itself is exposing us to more digital challenges as a nation. This graph was shared by a report by Freedom House in 2020, and they identified countries where they believe that technology will potentially disrupt the integrity of their election. And again, Nigeria is on the map, which is the reason why we're having this conversation, alongside the USA, of course, and Belarus, Argentina, Thailand, Iran, and Ethiopia, and Ghana also experienced it, I believe, at their last election. Indeed, Kenya also had some space of that. So the Pew Research Center did a survey, and they asked people across the world, what their views are in terms of cyber attacks on national security information, including public infrastructure and elections, and the likelihood of that. 74 people believe that it is likely that the country's sensitive national security information may be accessed and hacked and disrupted within the cyberspace. 69% of the global population believe that public infrastructure in their country could be damaged through cyber attack. And 61%, nearly a two-thirds, I beg your pardon, believe that election in their country may be tampered with, and that includes Nigeria. So if we would translate that to the Nigerian context, that 61% of Nigerians believe the upcoming election could be tampered with online on the cyberspace, then we have a challenge to deal with. So if we look at what happened in the presidential election in 2020 in the USA, 31% of them believe that the impact will be critical, and 24% that the impact will be significant, and 30% believe there will be some impact. Now, if you sum up the top three numbers, that means 85% of Americans believe that the cyberspace is a threat to their national security and indeed their national election. And if you add 11% on top of that, say there will be some attack, but it can be dealt with. That takes it to well over 90% of Americans. So in Nigeria, I believe we may not be up to 91% of the population of 96, but there's the propensity or the possibility that we could also face a high level of cyber attack. Now, what does that mean in Nigeria? Now, there is quite a few news around the space, and of course, law school was hacked, and the biggest cyber targets are claimed to be Nigeria and South Africa. INEC also experienced some challenges in terms of cybersecurity. So we are actually prone to be attacked in terms of cyberspace, and this will definitely have an impact on the conduct of the election and the outcome and the results that will come after that. So cyber threats range from people mimicking or mirroring the INEC portal, which itself is challenging and dangerous, and then some threat actors may intentionally target the INEC Beavers system. And that is why we're here this morning to walk through what this could be. If you look at some of our dailies in the last few months, hackers attacked our result portal during Ekiti Osun elections. Osun was just a few months away. So if that could happen with Osun, then what chances do we have? But the hackers are not just people in Nigeria. They may well be people outside Nigeria. And you can see from the daily Sunday, the daily Trust, beg your pardon, INEC chair also claimed early this year that foreign hackers are attacking their database, which is why we're now here. So what should we start to do for the INEC Beaver system, the DIM system, data in motion, not to be hacked? And what kind of threats do we potentially face? Range of them. And our experts this morning will take us through some of this and what we may need to start to do as a nation and as individuals and as experts to ensure that we reduce the vulnerability to this range of threats. It could be ransomware, voter data could be manipulated, there could be day of election itself interrupted. In fact, actual vote could be manipulated. People will mess with reporting, what we call fake news and misleading news that could thrive. There will be infrastructural attack to deviate our attention from what is important. There could be hack and dump, be voter targeted disinformation, and social media threats could be thrown at individuals like you and I, and indeed the candidates and political parties. All these and more are what we may face. To take us through this conversation today, we have four experts that will engage us for the next 1 hour or thereabout. Each of them will speak for an average of 12 minutes, and then we can have more conversations and questions thrown at them to expatiate on their thoughts. Let me quickly share with you the profile of our speakers and panelists. It's my pleasure to welcome Olamide Thompson Odeneye, a multi-skilled business development expert. She's been involved in Soft Solutions Limited as an enterprise key account manager, and currently, a convener of Child Online Safety NG. So she has practical hands-on experience on what cyber security challenges mean and how you start to deal with them. She was pioneer vice chairman of the Lagos branch of CISION, the Cybersecurity Experts Association of Nigeria, an organization that I'm pleased to announce that we have some partnership with. I've been working closely with them very soon. And she became the first female chairman of the same of the Lagos branch. So Olamide, welcome and good morning. Let me also welcome Bankole Adepola, a certified cybersecurity analyst and trainer with expertise in designing, setting up, maintaining, and programming cloud platforms, incident reports, monitoring, and many other areas. She is a graduate of security forensics from Stratford University in the USA, and he currently works for the cyber division of the Aluminium Group. So good morning, Bankole. Always fantastic to have you here. Dr. Adeniyi Akoni, another fantastic young man, well experienced, a cybersecurity expert, the doctorate degree in computer science. His major interest is information security. He's also a member of CISION, I mentioned earlier. He's had exposures in FCMB, Wema Bank, where he worked in control, domestic and foreign banking services. He currently serves as the head of computer science and cybersecurity department of Caleb University, Lagos, Nigeria. Good morning, Dr. Akoni. Good to have you. Last but not the least is Femi Adeagbo, CEO of Comnavic ICT, with over 20 years of IT experience within Nigeria and indeed the shores of Europe. He has successfully worked for many MDAs in Nigeria up to ministerial level, and he did work with world-class organizations like MBNA. And in Nigeria, he's worked with NCC, Fidelity Bank, Galaxy Backbone, Nigerian Film and Video Census Board, top-notch person when it comes to cybersecurity. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me thank you once again for coming online. Thank you for being part of this fantastic session, which I'm sure will be exhilarating. I'm going to invite Bankole to start off, actually, kick us off. What are the threats, potential of cybersecurity attack on our space and environment, looking closely at the upcoming 2023 national election? Bankole, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I hope my audio is okay, cool. My name is Bankole. Thanks, Doc, for the introduction. We all thank God we're all in the election period, and I think it's a very hot phase right now. Just in a few days, we'll be voting in the president of our great nation, Nigeria, and in subsequent weeks also there are other elections like governorship and the likes. And definitely with the current introduction of technology, as far back as I think 2015, Nigeria started considering adding up some electronic aspects to our voting system. And even over the years, we've seen several challenges with that voting system, and also there have been several upgrades to the voting system. And one of the major reasons why electronic voting has been introduced is basically, to ease up a whole lot of processes in the electoral space. So of course, we all know technology helps to balance a lot of things, but with this technology also comes a whole lot of threats, or also some disadvantages also. As much as technology has advantages, we all know it comes with disadvantages. And as a cybersecurity expert, all we look out for is majorly the threats. And in any space where we are invited to check, we check out for the threats, the vulnerabilities, and the risks involved. That's our job, actually. So in this whole process, we have analyzed it in several aspects. And definitely one of the major things as a cybersecurity expert we always look into is there are three major things, some may call it four: confidentiality, integrity, availability, and authenticity also, or authentication of whatever process is involved, whatever technology process is involved with all these things. And so basically, if you are conversant with cybersecurity, I don't think I need to break down all these terms to you. So confidentiality involves making sure that whatever data is transmitted or at rest is confidential enough, only those that have access. And then integrity is that, okay, this data, is it how we expect it to be stored in our databases or whatever, or is it the right person in terms of this voting process? Now, is it the right person that is that is voting? And that's where they began to introduce this BVAS system. And BVAS also covers a lot of integrity aspects, and also the authentication and authenticity aspect of the CIA triad, which is one of the guiding principles of cybersecurity generally. So BVAS system, the thumbprint and all these things, those are technologies that have been introduced, to the space to help to balance the cybersecurity threats. So of course, these systems come with a whole lot of threats. And as we know, I'll break down those threats into, let's say, 4 major exposures or threats. We have the human part of it, of the threats of these voting systems. We also have the political threats of this voting system, the legal threats, and also the procedure, or we call it the procedural threats with the voting systems. So in terms of technology, people could hack into the systems. These systems could have failures. We can remember as far back as 2015, when our then president, Goodluck Jonathan, wanted to display the newly introduced voting process, the newly introduced accreditation process. And if you notice, if you remember back then, we remember it was televised all over the world. And just for him to get accredited alone, it took over half an hour. And why? Why was this? The system was malfunctioning. The machines were not responding, and that was the president. He was there with his wife, and I think his mom or his grandmom or something, or his mother-in-law. But he was there to show the world how our systems worked. And unfortunately for us, they had to revert to the manual process that day because the technology failed. Of course, technology fails, but that day was peculiar because it was televised. And so we see that is one of the limitations, or what I call it a threat, the cyber threat to having to the introduction of technology into our electoral space. So sometimes there's also a sign of lack of skills. So maybe the person handling the machine didn't have the right skill set to do it, or probably a denial of service attack, or something might just a malfunction with technology, which is a threat on, imagine that was just one person. Imagine millions of machines across Nigeria having that same issue on election day. You can imagine the anarchy or the kind of unrest that could cause. And so that's one of the threats. Another threat I want to talk about is the human threat, which comes through the poorly managed, or will I call it poorly trained individuals that are handling these that are handling these skills, or that are handling these devices or technology. Sometimes they are not trained properly, to handle these devices, and also some of them could also have some malicious intent. For instance, if I'm a partisan to a particular party, and then also, of course, most people always, and I'm handling some of these devices, I might be tempted to manipulate some of these I'm tempted to manipulate the process at whichever stage maybe I have the power or administrative rights over. And so that's another threat. So I've talked about the technology threat, the human threat, and also the political influence or the political threat to the cyber world also. It is when there's an improper, or maybe a procurement process, an improper procurement process. So even if you've put all this technology in place, you've trained the right people, with the adequate knowledge or training that is required, and at the end of the day, there's a negative influence on a negative political influence on this technology that also affects the integrity of whatever is being transmitted or stored in all these electoral, election databases and the likes. So for instance, we had the issue of where a particular body was known to have an affiliation with a particular party, and they were dragging to be the ones to transport all those election materials. Anything could go wrong in between. We're not saying. So, that is a threat. That is a cyber threat actually to the election process, because anything could happen while all those materials are in transit or whatever. And so that's why you have, and how do you know that these people are independent? INEC is supposed to be an independent body. But when you start engaging with people that are or third parties that might have an affiliation, it becomes a threat to the cyber or to the technology that has already been, or the process that has already been put in place to ensure a free and fair election. And so that is the political influence. We also have the legal part of it, where after the results have been announced, we know this is something that is peculiar in Nigeria. We see what has happened in Osun State, in several states across the nation, where after the election is over, they come back and say the results was inconclusive and all the likes of it, even after they've been able to verify all these things through technology. So there's also the political influence or the legal part of it, where people will feel that they don't trust, the system, the confidentiality of whatever is being put out. And that's another threat. And another threat I will also talk about is the procedural aspect of, it's also the procedural aspect, the procedures that are put in place. That's also one thing that we should always consider, we always consider in the cyberspace, where, sorry, just a moment, in the cyberspace where, the procedure, how are these things transmitted, how are they stored, is there the right encryption in place, is it the correct third party doing this processing, and all those threats also. Those are some of the things that that also come under the process or procedural aspects of the election, the threats to election in terms of technology. Of course, denial of service attack. Also, then another aspect also I also want to talk about is we also need to check who has the knowledge to check the correctness of all these softwares that have been made. How do we decide that part of it? Who owns the source code? Does the source code belong to INEC? Does it belong to whoever has been contracted to do this job? Who owns this source code? Does INEC have the final say over what could be edited, and who has the administrative rights? Sometimes also we also come into a situation whereby these third-party solution providers supply these devices or supply this technology, and they don't give the full administrative right even to INEC. And so whenever there's an issue, INEC always has to fall back to these third-party or solution providers to tweak one thing or adjust something on the software, which could also could be a threat. Is there a particular process? Okay, does this person have to sign? Who checks? Who makes all these checks? So those are some of the things. And then who sells this software? To INEC, or to whoever is in place. How do we check their credibility? How do we do those? All those background verifications and all the likes. And
you're suggesting that procurement is a major issue in terms of the credibility and the integrity of the system itself.
Yes, it is. It's
absolutely. Thank you. Let me pause you for a minute. You've made some good points I don't want to lose sight of. So procurement, people, the politics, the integrity of how the data itself is kept, the knowledge and the training requirement for even operating the system, and even the fact that we've introduced technologies is a cyber threat in itself. There's some risk embedded in that.
Yes, correct, Doc. Okay, I think there's
that we should have unpacked as a. Let me pause you there and go to Olamide next. And after Olamide, we go to Dr. Akoni. Olamide, let's see you on the screen, please. Can you build on the thoughts that Bankole has started off with in terms of what these threats are and what we need to start to think about, and we may still be able to do in the next couple of hours, knowing that the election is just a few days away with regards to cybersecurity? Olamide, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Yes, Bankole has really laid a very good foundation. He's spoken a lot about some of the vulnerabilities that we're going to see with this electronic transmission of results. I'm happy that, he's really mentioned the third-party risks, because a lot of people usually omit that part, and I'm happy that he's hammered on it. So we're seeing things like, number one, who built the system? Hardware, software. So we're even looking at hardware and software now. What are the vulnerabilities that we can find within these systems, both the software and the hardware? What kind of malicious codes can be embedded in any of the two? Do the people who are in charge, do they have the right training? Have we carried out a critical audit of the system? Because like you've mentioned, in your introduction, you also mentioned the fact that the INEC chairman himself mentioned the fact that for Ekiti and Osun elections, there were a lot of attempts. On the portal. So that goes to show that, yes, people are monitoring, people are trying, and they will keep trying. So did we do an audit? Have we conducted an audit to find out, what went wrong? How can we prevent some of these things and all of that? So it's important that we conduct a routine election audit with some of these systems. Bankole also hammered on disinformation or misinformation. You also said that, and we're going to be seeing a lot more of that across, especially social media platforms. So where false news will be spread out just to influence voters into voting, for somebody else. So it could be false news, and we know how fast news travels on social media. We're also going to be seeing a lot of hacking. So not necessarily for profit. We're going to see a rise in what we call activism, people who just want to make a statement. It's not because they're out there to make any money. It may not, distort the results, but it will create some sort of distrust in the system and may create some sort of confusion. So people are like, after all, your website was hacked. How are we sure that these results are authentic, and all those kind of things? And then we'll also be seeing a rise in a lot of social engineering. Yes, I'm saying that because, it's going to be targeted attacks towards voting systems and the electorate, the people who are going to be casting their votes. Now, Bankole has said something. Yes, he said something about reaching out to the people themselves. So number one is the voters. Number two, the people who are behind the systems. And number three, those who are at the back end. So it's going to involve a whole lot of people. That's why social engineering, we're going to see a rise in that also. Now, what are some of the things that we need to quickly begin to look at? Like I said, number one, we need to start to treat everything that concerns this electronic voting system or the Electoral Act as part of our critical national infrastructure. It's very important because we are electing a leader. It's very important that we get it right. So we have to start to quickly treat that as part of our national, critical national infrastructure. We have to ensure that we are updating and we're maintaining all our voting hardware and software, like I said. These are some of the habits that we need to quickly start to put in place, even for the government officials who are the ones that are going to be managing all these things. How good is their cyber hygiene, for instance? What kind of emails are they sending across? How protected are their own systems? Because like I said, they may not be able to get to the voting portal directly. That's where social engineering is coming in. So you hack the people, you hack the system. Usually we want to say the final layer of security is the human firewall. We are the weakest and we are the strongest link. I always push for education, training, and awareness. This is very important. So those are three critical things we also need to keep looking at: education, training, and awareness. The populace needs to be aware. We need to keep training and retraining, because the truth is that we have a shortage of cybersecurity experts or personnel, even with the new syndrome of people having to travel out of the country. So we've lost a lot of personnel. So we need to quickly start to train and retrain. And we also must put into consideration every possible risk that can be coming from the third parties. So it's important for us to also critically begin to look at the sources where we are getting all of this from. I know Bankole hammered a lot on that, so I'm not going to really hammer a lot on that. We also need to be critical of the theft of voter information. So the system is hacked, information is leaked, we can steal anybody's information, in quotes, let me put it that way. Agreed, we're supposed to have the biometrics. Well, from the case of Osun, we saw that we had more people who voted as against the people that were registered by the system. So there's a disconnect somewhere. Even though we're doing the paper vote with the paper voting, we could see that there was a disconnect. How come somebody who wasn't accredited by the system got through and was able to cast a vote, which was what was used at the end of the day to acknowledge who won that election? So those are some of the things that we need to look at. The third party risk, very important. We need to ensure that we carry out an audit. I would have expected that an audit would have been carried out, especially with the issue of Osun State, so that there's an integrity. We have confidence in the system, and we know that, yes, there cannot be some level of manipulation. Also, we need to increase the level of awareness. People need to be aware, especially because we know we're going to have a lot of disinformation and misinformation campaigns across social media, especially. So we also need to educate the populace on that, so that they are aware of what they see to be true and what they consider false information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olamide. I mean, you made some points that really got me scribbling down very quickly. I like the point you made around the cyber hygiene of government officials. We have stories of government ministers who still use yahoo.com, their email. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. You can't overemphasize your point around voter education and awareness. Everybody needs to know what to do and what not to do. But most importantly, I wish the government has done what you mentioned around audits of the Ekiti Osun experiences and gleaning learning from that. That to me is totally strategic. If that hadn't been done, that would be quite sad. So if there's anything we need to throw out there very quickly after this session, is to quickly nudge them, to remind them that they've done it and pull out learning from that and ensure that learning informs what we do next. Thank you so much, Olamide. I'm going to come back to you. Let me quickly go to Dr. Akoni. I didn't hear Akoni now. I'm sure you're online to share your thoughts with us. I think Dr. Akoni actually has some slides to also push out. So let's see Dr. Akoni, and after that, Femi Adeagbo will come in with his, let me put him on the spot a bit, his experience and what he knows about the system. Because Femi had been part of the system for quite some time and he sits and lives within the system. I'm going to tweak his conversation to what is really going on out there in Abuja. But before we get to Femi, Dr. Akoni, are you ready for us? Dr. Adini Akoni, are you there, sir? You need to unmute and let's see your face. Thank you. Okay, while we're waiting for Dr. Akoni, I think let me quickly flip to Femi now. We come back to Dr. Akoni afterwards. Femi Adeagbo, let's see your face again, please. And please unmute yourself. So Femi, you need to unmute. Yeah, fantastic. So Femi, let me change the question to you now. What the heck is going on?
Doctor, hi, how are you?
Yeah, how are you? What's going on? And what should not be going on? What are we getting right? And what are we not getting right? So what do we need to do, can do to fix the gaps before the 25th of February 2023? Let me define yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Dr. Adeagbo, and co-panelists. I would like to shift it slightly away, if you like, from the, should I say, the tactical aspects we've discussed, or should I say even the symptomatic aspects. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, yeah.
So we've spoken a lot about symptoms of a deeper problem in that sense that need to be defended against. There are multiple vectors of attack. There are many motivations as well. State actors, maybe state actors that want to influence the outcome because of policy goals they may have in their countries, for example. That's happened in other countries. We've seen that even in the advanced climes. Olamide made a very good point about social activism, where people just want to make a statement. Maybe it's an issue they have about gender, maybe it's about whatever, you know. So for these reasons, you have multiple vectors of attack. But I think most of us would agree that the primary vector, and I say this without, I'm not sure there's any scientific basis for this, but it's probably financial inducement. So the politician who sees power as a do or die wants to get an advantage or disadvantage somebody else, or in the worst case scenario, discredit the entire thing so that maybe they can get another shot, if you like, at it. So we need to first understand what the vectors of attack are and how they are compartmentalized so that you can build long-term strategies to address each one. And then I'll go to the deeper issue of why. Why are we like this? And I think it's a global phenomenon. If you look at the number of places where technology has been introduced into election processes, it's been a mixed bag, really. Some countries have actually pulled back. Some use it for local elections, but probably not on a national basis. Some are forging ahead with it, I think like Estonia, but you know, there have been problems as well. But I think all this cyber, in the broader context of cybercrime, I think we need to ask ourselves a non-technical question. Why are we this way? Why is cybercrime becoming such a global problem and not actually a big problem in Nigeria? Of course, people are going to say, oh, poverty, population rise, lack of opportunity. But I beg to differ a little bit, and I'm going to just throw some things out there for us to chew on later on. I actually think the problem comes from a desperation for vanity in society. Cybercrime is just an evolution of crime. You know, it's a new vector of tools that's available to people. We go back to why do people actually undertake crime? Elections just present themselves as a nice, robust, juicy sector because there are a lot of uptakers across multiple positions being contested for. But why do we have this avalanche, if you like, of cybercrime? And I think it's really pursuit of vanity in society. And I think that's the long-term thing, the long-term malaise we need to actually tackle. Otherwise, the amount of money we would need to be spending over time in defending against cyber attacks will be unsustainable. And I'll just give you this to, you know, to lighten it up a little bit as well. In a post-COVID world, with inflation, with a war in Europe, with debt crisis, even in North America, you'd be amazed that the richest person in the world is the man selling fashion, goods, and alcohol. Benny Arnault, Louis Vuitton. You'll be amazed as well that Louis Vuitton's performance outstripped tech company performance. So what does it tell me? This tells me that the priorities of the world may be towards this consumerism. Alcohol in the group went up 44%. Wristwatches went up 71%. And fashion went up 81%. We were all regaled for many years to a cyber criminal, Hush Puppy. And what was the intersection point? What was Hush Puppy's brand in that sense? It was all about projecting vanity. Now, we apparently spend more time online than anybody in the world. We have a very young population who are very aspirational and wired. Is it really lack of opportunity? Or are we seeing an upsurge in people partaking in cybercrime to fund vanities? Because if that is the problem, then we need a long-term fix, and it's a mindset fix. We're not going to fix it by deterrent technology or defensive technology alone. If we don't fix it from the human mind, it's just going to cost too much in the future. There are going to be 1 million people ready to hack INEC portals, and where do you start defending? So I think we need to look at that for starters. There was another narrative, Doctor, in your slides, and I think it was about 40-something% attributable to poverty, and lack of jobs. Again, I find that strange because employers keep saying they can't find people to train to work. That they just can't find staff. 2, our e-channel spend January this year was 38.7 trillion naira. If you cross-pollinate this with our GDP, our stated GDP, it just doesn't add up. So it's either we're hemorrhaging money in society somehow on the things we should not be spending so much on, and in that process creating poverty. And because everybody wants to have as much as possible, they also see political office as an easy way to accumulate stupendous wealth. And as long as we have these soft issues, you will have people ready to spend anything to engage the best hackers in the world, both locally and otherwise, to influence the outcome of elections. So that's a big problem. And I would even say the bigger problem is that we have about 88 million people under 15. 88 million under 15. We're one of the largest under 15 populations in the world. So if we don't start curating their minds and they also grow up into this, should I say, social media inspired vanity world, and they have the technology tools, you will have an army of cyber criminals that you cannot defend against. I mean, companies, governments, electoral will just be playing defense all the time. And I think it will be a losing battle ultimately. So I'm looking at it from a much longer term view, as opposed to, what's going to happen in 2 days, because I think INEC has probably put in place all they can to defend against it, whichever way to be contested, because we also have a culture of contesting things. And that's one good, should I say, tick point for former President Jonathan, who considered an election. We don't concede. So we'd go to court, you'd call your experts, I'll call my experts. We're going to probably confuse all the judges. He hacked, she hacked, they didn't hack, they hacked, this is what they did. It was an SSL attack, it was this, it was... In the end, we may have to revert to manual to get judgment. So many would ask, if we have to do that, what's the efficacy of the investment? Because you and I know the last elections, it was about INEC server or non-server or what have you, with some funny experts from Kenya and all sort of things, but in the end it was resolved. Probably largely behind the scenes as opposed to what actually transpired in court from the viewpoint of being able to prove those allegations. So when you combine all these things, I think we need to really focus on the root cause of the problem more than the symptoms, even though we need to tackle the symptoms as well as we go along. So that's my contribution for now, Doctor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Femi. What you've done is you've turned the triangle of the conversation around to sum it up, really, the root causes. And they're quite fundamental. So you're telling us that we have a population with substantial amount of 88 million under 15. That in itself is a recruitment ground for cyber enthusiasts. And why would they be interested? Because of the nature of our social existence. We glamorize 419 crime. It's cool to be able to do that and make money, and musicians will praise you, and some of that can even be done to sponsor Nollywood. So it's cool. So why would I do it? Therefore, if INEC site is there to be hacked, to make money or to blackmail or to influence, so why not? And on top of that, you're telling us that the politicians are also desperate. People want to get to power for various reasons, many of which are not exceedingly positive. Therefore, in an attempt to take advantage of or disadvantage your opponents or to discredit the process, then why not hack the system and make a mess out of it? So you really dug deep in terms of the root causes and the fundamentals there. And but does that still assure us that the next 2 days will have any element of sanctity with regards to cyber operations and an election and beavers? Big question. I don't know whether I'm not sure Dr. Akoni is here. Ankole, let me put you back on. And let's kind of play a bit around the thoughts that Femi Adeagbo has just shared, the social dimension to cyber security or the lack of it. What, in your view, you're also kind of youngish anyway, so you're possibly in that demographic. What, in your view, do you think an average young man would or could or may want to do to show they've got muscles or to make money if they're going to attack INEC side? Let's bring it down to earth now. So we have all these young people, very smart, very intelligent, too many of them in terms of our demographic picture, who could be an advantage if well used, but currently we are not. So I'm a young man, I know a bit about cyber, I can do a bit of hacking, and presidential election is in 2 days. What do you think could be going through my mind? What damage can I do? Let me put it bluntly. I can't hear you. You need to play with your mic, Bankole.
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me?
Yes, better now. Great.
Cool. So, well, for an attacker, or let me say a malicious attacker, there are, and there are several things the attacker can do on the IT infrastructure of the INEC portal. So first, they can do a denial of service attack to whatever machines that is handling data or handling any form of process. And what this means is that those machines would not be reachable. And so, for instance, if they're trying to upload maybe a result or something, it might not get to the right, it might not get to the correct assets that they are targeting. And so the denial of service attack could be part of it. And most of the time, there are different kinds of attackers. There is the ones that just want activists that just want to show off. And some might actually be politically motivated. Probably they've seen that whichever party they are supporting is likely not to win. And so they can now choose to The system in Nigeria is actually to collate the result and post it on the INEC website. So in the process, an attacker that already has another way is an attacker that has access to the INEC website can also, change the result, and that's like defacing the website in this firm, but not defacing it in terms of graphics and the likes, but defacing it, to display the results that they want. Probably an XYZ party is likely to lose, and they know that ABC is like, and then they now interfere with the results that is being posted. That's another hacking, and that's just to show up that, and then that could cause a bit of disruption also. Like, this is the person that INEC pushed, this is the person supposed to win, and so that's a little bit of disruption in the service. We've seen also malwares can be installed so as to decrypt whatever information is being transmitted or is being stored. And so the only way to actually get the right result in this case is to revert back to maybe the paperwork or whatever that was done on site. And so those are some of the things that a cyber person or an attacker, a malicious attacker, might just want to show off, or also for his own personal gain. He can also hijack, he can also do a ransomware on the INEC portals or even the INEC machines, send some and then hold the website as ransom. And so when they are trying to upload, they are not able to upload. Also, they have to pay that person a particular sum before he maybe opens the website again. So that's when it comes to financial gain now. So some people might actually do that to make some financial gain. So there are N numbers, or even spoofing of maybe the INEC chairman's email address, sending an email to somebody else in another state and saying, hey, this is the result that got to my desk, kindly upload this instead of that, and which also comes under social engineering. So somebody might have been able to spoof the email address of whoever is in charge, maybe one person that they expect to communicate. And so that's where, and some of the ways to mitigate this, like maybe the social engineering, is, okay, when you get this thing via email, you can just do due diligence and maybe make a phone call to the necessary person and say, are you the one that sent XYZ? And then for the other ones I mentioned, having a backup and having the right security mechanisms in place can also mitigate those kind of threats, like the denial of service attack. So if they have a good monitoring, maybe 24/7 monitoring system in place, they will be able to detect when somebody is trying to maybe ping the network to, and then bounce back all those, so just a good monitoring system can also defer those kind of attacks, like the denial of service, and then the ransomware too. When the system is properly monitored, it could also mitigate the threat of the ransomware and denial of service attack.
Thank you, Michael. I think that answers the question from Umar Sadisu Ibrahim, who says, we all know that injustice anywhere is a threat everywhere. So with regards to 2023 general elections, how will cybersecurity help the hackers from getting access to beavers? Now, let me come back to you, Olamide Odeneye. Now, by the power invested in me, I'm going to make you the honorable minister for the 2023 election for the next 7 days or 14 days thereabouts. And this is your task, Olamide. What can you do as a cyber expert to deal with some of these challenges and threats that you guys have shared with us, and validly so? But also, more importantly, when you leave that office, Olamide, I hope you're here with us. What will you recommend that we can do to start to deal with those social fundamentals that Femi Adiago spoke about earlier, in terms of our social bias, our economic lifestyle that is unsustainable, our flair for e-spending and all that kind of stuff? So you have two briefs now. The first one is, we have an election in a couple of days, and the second one some days after. So by March 11th, the second election will have been done. You are now going to be in charge of absolutely everything election security as far as cybersecurity is concerned for the next couple of weeks. That's your new brief. So what will you do? What intervention can you put in place, even though we have just a couple of hours to go, to ensure that we mitigate the risk that everyone has spoken about on one hand? The second one is the fundamental, the deep root causes, the social dimension of Nigeria that is making us more exposed to cyber risk. The youth population, the skill set or the lack of it, our flair for being online, our values or the lack of it, that's making the online space possibly more glamorous than it should be. what will your thoughts be around that? Because you work with young people and cybersecurity anyway. What will you suggest, Olamide? And by the time we finish, I'm hopeful that Dr. Adeni Akoni will be ready to present to us. Thank you, Olamide. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, sir. Oh well, as the new INEC chairman in this space, what are the few things that I will quickly need to do? I already said first. So if I have not done that audit, no matter how small that audit is, it's important that we do that audit. We need to know what went wrong, what is going to go wrong. You know, it's a projection into the future. We have to look at everything, internal, external. You know, it's like maybe carrying out our own vulnerability assessments and maybe a sort of a pen testing, just to be sure, because that way we are aware of the possible things and then we know the kind of solutions that we need to quickly put in place. We also know that it's important for us to be resilient. That's what cybersecurity also teaches us, so that even if there's a failure, we can quickly ride over that failure and, you know, do what we need to get done to ensure the confidentiality, the integrity of the results that we're going to be putting out. I've also said, for me, I will keep pushing this. We cannot overemphasize building the human firewall. So training, awareness, education is ongoing, cannot stop. We need to keep doing that. All levels, from every single person who will be handling anything during the election. So even if it's the driver that is going to drive the bus, the person that will offload the papers, the people that will set up the polling booths, everybody needs to be educated. So there's an education, there's a training, a retraining, you know, and there's a necessary awareness so that we can ensure that there's a certain consciousness and everybody is aware of what they need to do. And then I also said we also need to ensure that we've put in place a process that can secure the voters' registration data, because I've said it, that's also a way that, you know, this election can be manipulated. We can still voter information. So it's also very important that we put in place
I think we've lost Olamide's connectivity there for a bit. Can anyone hear me? So I'm sure it's not me.
Yeah, Doc, I can hear you.
Okay, you can. So I think no problem. I think I'm sure she'll come back soon. Dr. Akoni, are you there to share your thoughts?
Yes.
After you, I want to bring Femi Adiago back very quickly, so that Femi will start to now unravel what are the things, top 3 things we can do to deal with those fundamentals. Yes, just a couple of days away, we recognize that time is not on our side. But what do we do to deal with those root causes? What should we do to deal with those root causes? Thank you, Olamide. I think you're back. Thank you. Dr. Akoni, are you there?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Fantabulous.
Yeah,
So,
good afternoon.
can we see you and see your screen and see your lovely face as well, please, sir?
Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant. Welcome again, Dr. Akoni. I hope you are not act.
Thank you, sir. No, it's just part of the challenges.
It is a reality. Yeah. It's really good to have you. I mean, you have about 10 minutes to quickly really give us those top-end strategic thoughts around what are the threats that we face and what do you think we can do to deal with that threat. The election is just a couple of hours away. If you're INEC chairman today, what will be your concern? What will keep you awake at night, and what will you do about it? The floor is yours, sir, Dr. Akoni.
Thank you very much. Viewers at home, thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Actually, if you look at Nigerian system, we in almost in all things, we tend to be different. The way we do our things, the way we handle our things. Our election process has been largely manual. So chances of disrupting the network and all that is to a large extent reduced. However, just like other panelists have equally contributed, we discovered that from the touch points, various touch points, there could be issues, there could be challenges. A lot of issues will come up. For instance, if somebody is carrying the ballot box from one ward to another or to policing center, there could be a lot of issues. So I want to rather talk along the touch points. The PVC on its own, creating the PVC as a process. So the INEC chairman has done a lot, put some features to make like 14 of them, and to ensure that cloning such would not be that easy. Cloning a PVC will not be that easy. And of course, if you look at it too, having to go around impersonating will be minimized because of the facilities on ground, the VBAC that they have, so that if anyone is coming up, it will have to verify to be sure that is the one. If you try with your biometric, maybe the fingerprint, which is the first one, if that one fails, you want to try the facial appearance. If that works, oh, that will be fine. So you'll be authenticated that they know you are what the system is holding for you. You are the one you are the who you claim to be. So in such a way, we can be sure that the issue of CI and A will be there. The confidentiality will be there. The integrity of whoever, not that somebody can just manipulate to a large extent. Because it is predominantly manual, there are also challenges that will go along with that. For instance, if I would need to move from one polling booth to another, or from one ward to another, even though the election process has been good, casting my vote and all that, if that has been good, there's still a way that the system can be manipulated if in the process, because it has to be along the chain. Voting, then counting the election at the polling booth, then returning those papers, those elections, those election results, sending them to the appropriate, to the central collating center, might only be a challenge. For instance, it will have to be moved from maybe with a vehicle or maybe a ferry. If it happens on the way that the ferry capsized or whatever, we're not praying for that, but it will always happen anyway, somewhere along the line. The vehicle that is carrying it might have a challenge on the way, and there might be an issue. So I want to rather feel that those are the threats that we can go, we can face when it comes to this manual process. And what we would love to see, since the PVC has a facility to upgrade, which are now the potentials as enumerated by the INEC chairman. So since it has a way of being upgraded, then why don't we go full-blown automation, so that in the process, just like other panelists have said, we can do some backups. Even if anything fails, of course, the one that is sent to the central, the one that is in the central database can always be leveraged on, and then we'll move on with that. So no actual maximal loss will be recorded with that if you go that route. So as a nation, I'll be looking forward to see a process that will be fully automated, so that if anything happens, even if the site is defaced, we can always go back, come back and then restore the database, restore the app and all that, and then the link will be up and running again. And there will also be some alternate sites that if it happens this way, of course, we can migrate to this particular level, and then we'll move on. So with all of this, I think the election will always speak what it ought to, just like the INEC chairman has equally said. And like other panelists have said, ignorance will be the bane. And because of that, we will need to keep on educating ourselves, talk to everyone, Nollywood will go and do it, papers will run it, and so many others. We'll be able to talk to ourselves and educate ourselves. Before I conclude, let me just say this of John F. Kennedy. In his word, he was saying that ignorance of one voter, or maybe you say one vote or one voter, the ignorance of one voter in a democracy is enough to cause a security breach along the line, along that chain. So because of that, we will need to keep on educating ourselves so that the driver will move the election material to and fro, will be educated. We need to be educated. That ignorance on his part might put the whole thing, the whole process into jeopardy. So we need to understand that. And if we have all this in place, then we'll be fine at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Akoni. Once again, you've emphasized the point made exceedingly clear by Olamide Odeneye around education, training.
Yes.
You use the phrase building the human firewall, so that enlightenment, training, and with training and education is fundamental to bridge those gaps. Again, the 2 points you also made I find quite apt, actually, and thank you for this thought. You're more or less suggesting a risk-based approach to how this is done. I think that's really important for any system anyway, not to talk of cyber. And most importantly, you emphasize that if we're doing this half-baked measure of a bit of manual, a bit of technical, a bit of technology, that in itself comes with huge amounts of risk. So let's go full-fledged, full-blown tech, so that we know what we are focusing on and we are focusing energy and resource at the right places at the right thing. Thank you. I'm going to come back to you for some final thoughts, sir. But Femi, I'm going to bring you back in a minute or two. If an chairman calls you this morning and say, Femi Adiago, I want to be my consultant cybersecurity for this upcoming election, what top 3 risks should you ask him to be worried about? Femi, I hope you get that. What top 3 risks are you going to ask him to be worried about in terms of cybersecurity, and what should he be doing about them? But before you answer that question, let me quickly read out some comments on our YouTube channel from you guys. Thank you very much. Some of you are saying, well done on the program. It's a positive impact program. Thanks to Obudo Kichuku and Oyewole. Some of you are asking about your results in terms of what you did with us. Just send us your full name, your telephone number, and your date of birth, and your results will be sent to you within 24 hours or less. In fact, less than 12 hours, you get it, I promise you. We'll be responding megally to that in the last few days too. So thank you for those who are coming back to us. We also have comments from Christian Ono saying it's nice to be here. It's also nice to have you here, Christian. We have Mansoor Mohammed from Kebbi State watching and listening. Well done. And Aslan Suleiman from Jigawa. Well done to you too. And we have Logat Timothy from Nasarawa State. Wow, this is a Nigerian event. Well done, everyone. Be online. Bala Yakub from Kaduna is also here. And we have Abdul Wahab Yadusa from Kogi State and Tuko Balarabe from Jigawa State. Umar Salisu Ibrahim did say that we all know that injustice anywhere is a threat. So what can be done with regards to the beavers system? That's a big question. Richard Ofo, I can hear you too. Anthony Udom is watching from and listening from Owerri. Teresa is watching from Kaduna. Nice lecture, said Musa Boba. Thank you. I'm hoping I can see some questions here. Nothing yet. So please keep the questions and the comments coming. Mercy Naji says, I totally agree with you, sir. I'm sure she's talking to you, the panelists. It is definitely a mindset fix we need for the younger generation. I think that is speaking very much to Femi's social economic dimension to cyber challenge that we have. A very apt point there. Sunday Prosper from River State loves this program. That's great. And Sunday and White Worship also from Lagos is loving it. So thank you for loving it, but we want you to do more than love. We want you to share your thoughts and share your questions. Now, Abdul Karim Yahya says, what collaboration does INEC have with CSHAN, Cybersecurity Association of Nigeria, to help sanitize the election process? I think that's an Olamide question. So Olamide, please be ready to respond to that. I hope there's some form of collaboration. Nsika Isu says she wants to say something very important. Please say that and share it on the platform. Blessing James says, monitoring of personnel from training to job posting, avoiding excess makeup. I think you're talking about avoidance of too much bureaucracy. So Messi, I will have to agree with you on that. Some people are keen to know what happens about the cybersecurity training and certification. We are waiting to hear from the ministry. As soon as they give us a thumbs up, you guys will be the first to know. Adisa Adedoyin says, thanks to all the panelists. It's a big eye opener. I hope this can be televised widely for more youth to learn. Thank you, Adisa. Thank you to the panelists again. Huge round of applause from Hastings. I don't know where you're from, but thank you for that. That's great. So those are all the comments from now. Some are still dropping in. But let me go back to Femi Adiago now. That question. So INEC chairman just called you. Femi, let's see your face. And says, Femi, you are my consultant for the next 2-3 weeks. What are the top 3 things I should be worried about? And how do I fix them? What will you tell him, Femi? Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Professor Mahmoud has exceptional consultants, I'm sure. And INEC has not been starved of any resource. And I must say this, I mean, I'm not affiliated to INEC in any way, shape, or form, even though I know the chairman. We're colleagues in 2007 in the education sector reforms. And he's extremely competent man. I think the first thing is that human wall. We ourselves must be very mindful and careful of being used as innocent agents of disinformation, sharing of premature information, and adding to the kind of confusion that sits on top of, if you like, cyber destructive activities. So that's a very, very critical one. I would certainly, I've been very, very concerned with the Osun situation, and I've wanted, and I believe they would have done that as well, gotten a comprehensive audit of how that process, whether it's a process technology breach could occur, and how to actually plug those gaps. So I'd want to be doing almost destructive testing at this point. I'd want to be doing, as I think Olamide mentioned, extreme VAPTs, you know, attack the systems ourselves across multiple dimensions. Are there any of the transmission links relying on SS7, which can be susceptible to hacking? If so, how do we mitigate it? How do I ensure that, you know, current state data is not distorted along? I mean, all the, you know, things you typically defend or against in this kind of situation. I'd expect them to have been running those kind of checks and getting results around the, you know, the 100% mark, because even as you know, there isn't any type of infrastructure that cannot be hacked. Doesn't exist. We've seen hacks at the Pentagon, we've seen the White House, Facebook, big technology, the companies who do tech have been hacked. So I would want to also ensure that we can quickly identify, isolate, manage, and communicate. If indeed it occurs in some areas, so as not to contaminate the confidence of citizens in the wider environment. Because once the confidence goes, you are climbing up a very steep incline. Because once people don't have, well, no, there was this, Beavers was compromised, it's not working here. I think Adeni mentioned the embarrassing situation with President Jonathan at the beginning of the process then. And it was, I mean, you're here thinking, well, if the number one citizen cannot vote and the thing is not working, end of story. So that already has created a framework for anyone who wants to contest to say it's not working. So when the guy loses, it's not working, the one that wins will say it's working substantially, and then we get into this conflict. And recall we said earlier on, evidence in the cyber domain is much more complicated to adduce and assimilate, with all due respect to our judges. It's much more complicated to adduce and to assimilate by the law court. So, you know, I will expect an advice if I were in your hypothetical situation. The citizen element, very, very critical. We would run almost 0-day tests to 0 hour to ensure that all the vectors of attack, all the vectors, insertions, transmission, the bimodal devices themselves, and would have a containment strategy just in case. What do we then do? How do we manage? How do we isolate, compartmentalize it, and manage it in such a way that it does not technically infect the broader system and also infect the confidence of the citizenry about the system? Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Femi. So the human factor, again, reinforcing Dr. Akoni and Olamide's view around education, and awareness. So don't allow yourself to be used. Learning from the Osho example and doing some self-interrogation, destructive testing really of their system, right up to 0 day, and creating scenarios of what if, and then what contingencies we have in place to deal with those what ifs. I think those are fantastic.
Yes, and can I also add, as a rider, I've not checked of late, but I know that a few years back, the head of the German electoral board was a card-carrying member of a political party. They just don't expect that you would dare interfere with an electoral system. So we're back again to I make this point about the logistic management, I think Olamide made, because we go back to our behavior, our nature as a people, because you can't foolproof all the checkpoints. Okay, so you deploy the best security, but what if they are compromised? You train, monitor the driver, but what if he accepts a bribe? So again, unless and until we deal with the bigger issue of our behavior, the sheer costs and effort of mitigating the risks may outweigh what we're trying to achieve altogether.
Absolutely. I have to agree with you. You're talking about Scandinavia, for example, where I believe it's actually a crime not to vote. So, which means even everyone working in their own INEC,
absolutely,
vote for somebody.
And
that shouldn't be an issue in terms of their day-to-day work. Fantastic. I'm going to now go back to our other panelists. Thank you once again, Femi. Olamide, any relationship with INEC in terms of session? Is there any advice you're giving to them or providing for them in response to one of the questions? And what would be your passing message to our audience today with regards to cybersecurity and the 2022 election? Dr. Adeni and Bankole also ready with your one-liner so that we can come very close to wrapping up, putting out all the lessons and all the learning, and then possibly picking up on one or two comments before we close for the day. Olamide, floor is yours, please.
In terms of partnerships, I won't say for a fact that we have any direct partnership, or none that I'm aware of, but because our members also cut across various organizations and sectors and industries, I can boldly say that yes, we have members of our association who are also working with INEC, and definitely even within our association, we do a lot of training and retraining of our members. So we're sure that members who are part of INEC would have also carried through some of those things that emphasis on within the association. My parting words will always be my parting words. You know, there's never a time I tell people, bottom line, let's build the human firewall, which is our last level of defense. So awareness, training, education. That's it from me. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Olamide. Adebankole, your final thoughts?
Okay, thanks, Doc. Thanks everyone for also attending this insightful webinar session. So my final thoughts to the general public and the general audience is one of the cyber threats that we could face is also fake news. And so we as even though we're also part of the system, and so we should avoid spreading fake news in terms of when it comes to elections, so as to we should avoid disruptions of the election process. And then we also, as the INEC body, should learn to learn from previous mistakes. So for example, back then, there was an attack on Ukraine's presidential election at 2014. And when those same hackers tried again in 2019, they failed woefully. And that's because the system had already covered the previous gaps that they had in place, or that they thought was whatever was in place. And also another thing is, this election comes maybe once in 4 years and the likes. So I also advise those electoral bodies and people that are involved, stakeholders, to always be prepared. It should not be when it's time for election, then they start rushing to do things. And that's when a lot of errors come to place. And so that's also one of the parting things. And for the general audience, we should also practice good cyber hygiene, as the other panelists has also advised. And information security awareness is never enough. And so, yeah, I think that's what I have.
Thank you, Adebankole. Fantastic. Dr. Akoni, you still with us, Sam? Dr. Adeni Akoni, are you there?
Yes, yes, I am.
What would be your final
words of wisdom? Have people only been saying? I want to advise the INEC chairman to take all issues. Whatever has happened, maybe in Anambra, in Osun, in other places, each of them are special cases. Of course, there's no two projects will be exactly the same. However, the knowledge one has garnered in the previous one can always be helpful in subsequent ones. So if there have been issues in some, or pockets of issues in some states, we should just find a way of learning from such. And then at the beginning, we should find a way to bring all stakeholders to a roundtable discussion, because if we're implementing a project, it's almost impossible. It's practically impossible for us to imagine all scenarios. Nobody is an island of wisdom. So we can always learn from each other. The angle from which you are looking at a particular thing might be different from what another person, point of view. So we can bring all this together to strengthen our security positions concerning elections. So as a parting word, I want to say that election process should be all encompassing, and at every touch point, everybody who matters should actually be involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Akoni. We appreciate that. Let me just quickly read through some comments online and then sum up the day. We are bang on time, and I'm so happy and proud that we have not strayed out of the time frame. Peter Ibe says, thanks for this opportunity, Alogene. I can't take this training for granted. We also will not take you for granted. Thanks for being here, Peter. Uma Aliyu, there was some suspicion that I think I read Uma earlier. Let me take Uma repeated the question again about beavers and about voters' information. I think that's been addressed by our panelists in terms of a robust system that will ensure the integrity of all the data kept and all the data that we on. Let me now just say a big thank you to our panelists. It's been fantastic having those nuggets of thought and ideas and propositions from you. Let me say thank you to Adeban Kole, one of us. Olamide Odeneye, doing a fantastic work with Session. Keep doing that, madam. We appreciate you. We adore you. We like you to keep flying higher. Dr. Akoni, who I'm hopeful is going to be one of our key faculty moving forward, has been working with us through Session also to reinforce the credibility of our programs, and we're going to be doing a lot more with Session in the next few days, actually, where we've had some fantastic conversation. And Dr. Akoni, thank you for your contribution and guidance. And the little you've shared with us has been really helpful with shaping how we're doing what we're doing. Hence the reason why we have not pushed out, because we wanted to make sure it ticks the box for you. She has the same name with me, but doesn't share the same face, actually. But fantastic gentleman who's also very close to the Alogene group in terms of guiding us, sharing his thoughts, and shaping our strategy, and keeping us on our feet in terms of what we do in the cyberspace. And definitely more work with him, through him, for him, as far as our cyber security operating space is concerned. So I believe 5 things from all the fantastic stuff shared today.
Okay.
All of them kind of linked, like it looked really when I was kind of trying to conceptualize it. I think Ade Bankole talked about the fundamentals of planning. If you plan well, we're not reactive, then this will help us, because with every technology comes risk. And with cybersecurity will always come risk. Most importantly, the procurement and third-party risk were emphasized by him and Olamide. So planning is key. Second one is cyber hygiene. I love that phrase. How do we even play within that space to ensure that we're not exposing ourselves inadvertently, as opposed to making sure that we're doing things right. So cyber hygiene is key. Build a human firewall. And I think that speaks to the fundamental Femi spoke to, the root causes of even why we're where we are. And we have this level of threat because of our young, vibrant, 88 million young people that are not that engaged, or social media has become something else in terms of our value system. And there's a contradiction, therefore, around how we engage there, and even how we use the e-platforms, and even the threats that we face. So there's something there that we need to look into post the general election. So building human firewall, but built on top of that will be a lot of awareness and education that Dr. Akoni spoke to, and Lamidi also spoke to make sure we get it right. The fourth point is learning from lessons, and I think that is common across all our panelists. What should happen? Beavers is still in court. What have we learned from that? Has HINEC taken the time to self-destruct its own system? Some VAPT intensive one to even check out where the gaps are and what could we have done differently and better before we now go into the 25th February. And therefore, from doing that, lastly will be, again, thinking back to the planning bit, is day zero planning. Planning and replanning till the last second checking every single checkpoint, developing what ifs and scenarios of what could go wrong, and having containment strategy to deal with that if and when that occurs. So planning, cyber hygiene, building the human firewall through education and awareness, learning from lessons, and day zero planning again finishes it off. So either can be as ready as they can be. As everybody agrees, no system is foolproof from hacking. Therefore, the more intensive we are, the better for us all. On this note, I want to say thank you once again to all our panelists. Thank you, most importantly, for those of us who logged in to listen to this. We will release a short communique to sum up the key learnings from this and share that as wide as possible. But most importantly, make sure you vote, but keep safe and keep well. God bless you all. God bless Nigeria. Thank you. Have a fantastic day. Take care.
Yeah, cheers.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You too.